Hey, good to see you. You look comfortable in that office.
Yeah, it's good to be seen, and I am comfortable.
Hey, so a lot has transpired over the last couple of weeks, and I was just wondering from a personal level, because of your attachment to Minneapolis, how difficult was that for you to watch unfold, et cetera? And then yesterday, in talking to JB Bickerstaff, I understand you guys go back a couple of years now, and he said that you're trying to align something in terms of working against social injustices and such here. So I know there's a lot there, but thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, so first I'd start with, you know, we're in week 7 of our off-season program. So the players, to their credit, to the coaches, to their credit, we're working. All the while, like the rest of the world, we've been spending a lot of time talking about social justice. And certainly my big message to our guys has been to get in the arena. And we're all about action. And I think we have some amazing people, both on the team and this building, that have really provided some great resources to our players so that they can become part of the action. And you mentioned JB, and we want to be a strong part of this community. We want to be a strong part of positive change. And I realize that from my platform that I have here, I'm able to affect change. So something that Anquan Bolden said in a meeting a couple days ago that we were in, attach your name. And that's something that I take seriously. So while I'm attaching my name, I'm leading a football team, I want these guys to know the impact that they can have. And some of the things that I've read or I've watched, some of the messages out there have been so enlightening, whether it's Brian Flores or Emmanuel Acho, Frank Reich, Richard Sherman, Jalen Rose, Steve Kerr, the McCourty twins, just different ways that people have expressed this message, I think has been incredible. And the dialogue is great. And now JB, our team, our players, we're going to work towards some action items to make sure that we leave a positive impact out of all this.
And if I could quickly follow, what was your reaction, Coach, to the NFL acknowledging that it had not done enough, that it had not listened to its players maybe the way it should have?
Yeah, Tom, I'm so keen on dialogue with our players and listening. And my big note to our players is that I got their back, and that's not just lip service. I'm standing right there beside them. They have my support, and I promise you one thing: we'll just continue to listen to each other from a place of mutual respect.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Our next question is from Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, if you could unmute your line on your side, please.
Hey, Coach, staying along those lines then, what is your position? Obviously, there will be some things that are going to happen as this season gets underway, and I'm sure that kneeling during the national anthem will be revisited, and that's something that I'm sure a lot of players will want to do. What is your position on that whole thing? And, if they decide to do that, will you support that?
Yeah, my position, Mary Kay, is I want to make sure I support our players. But first things first, I want to make sure I sit down with them and talk. And we've started the process in that dialogue. But I can't speak necessarily to the future in that regard. I can just promise you this: we'll spend as much time as needed to make sure that we're all on the same page and we are a united front from a player, staff, you name it. We want to make sure that we're constantly staying in the dialogue on these issues, because it's not something that's just going to go away. We want to make sure that we're constantly looking at this in ways that we can do better. So I really would love to first sit down with our social justice committee, sit down with our captains, sit down with the leaders of this football team before we talk about things in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Scott Petrick, you're up. If you can unmute on your side, please.
Hey, Coach. Tom mentioned it. I'm just curious. You spent so much time in Minnesota. What was the reaction for you just to watch, initially the George Floyd and then the demonstrations and the protests? How did you process that?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time there. Had 3 kids born there, so that city has a place in my heart, and it was sad. It was heartbreaking. It was frustrating. It was maddening. It was all of those things. So my reaction was just like the rest of the country. But I know this: there's some special people there. There's some special people in this city, and I think we're all going to work together, unite to make sure that we're in a better place through all this. And not to mention, it's Wednesday, and yesterday was the funeral for George Floyd. So that was a solemn day. We canceled our meetings, we canceled our workouts yesterday, so that we could give that day its proper due. And we really can never lose sight of that.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Tony Grossi, you're up. If you could unmute on your side.
All right. Well, with my little time here, I do want to ask a football question. So I know this discussion is going to keep going, but I might not have another chance. So I'll break up the rhythm here for 1 second. Kevin, what was your reaction to having the joint workouts canceled in Green Bay? How is that going to impact your training camp? And part of that, given the 9-page memo yesterday on the protocols, can you get your work done in training camp this year after not getting physical work done to this point?
Yeah, obviously disappointed that we're not going to be able to have a joint practice with Green Bay leading up to our preseason game. I think it's always valuable to work against a different team, a different colored jersey at that point in camp. I think it's helpful to go against a different scheme. That defensive scheme is different than our defensive scheme that we'll be facing in camp. So there's some value, but in terms of the protocols, and we'll just, whatever the rules are, we'll play by the rules, and we're like every other team. We're all in the same boat, and I think the message, as always, has been and will continue to be, we just have to find a way. So I think, to our players' credit, the way they're learning on these Zoom calls, to our coaches' credit, the way they're teaching, the workouts that the players are putting in, and some of them are in their garages that have been retrofitted as gyms. They're just finding a way, and I think it's a great message that the players are living out live and in living color here, because that's a message that we talk about during the week leading up to a game. So we are aware of the rules, and we'll play by the rules just like the other 31 clubs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Jeff Shadell, you're up.
Hey, Kevin, good to see you. I know you're happy to be in your office, but have things really changed much on how you communicate with your players? Because it seems to me like you're still doing the Zoom stuff as if you were still at home.
Yeah, Jeff, nothing's changed from a standpoint of how we're reaching our players, teaching the systems, if you will. What we did with this building being open, we've made it optional for our coaches that are in town that want to come in and work from their office like me. And it was amazing. All the guys that have kids rushed into the office. Shocking. But the guys that are getting their work done in their own home office, or the guys that are out of town, we didn't feel the need for them to mandate that they be here while the players aren't here. So we're continuing on our Zoom curriculum.
Thank you, Jeff. Jake Trotter, you're up. If you could unmute, please.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin, you said a couple minutes ago, you want to be unified as a team when it comes to these issues and standing together. Regarding kneeling, if you have players that come to you and say, we feel this way, is that something you want to do together as a team when you say, be unified on this, or is that something you're going to leave up to players ultimately to decide, in terms of getting in the arena and sending the message that they want to send?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jake. And the honest answer is I don't know. I want to make sure that when we get together, we sit down. That's one of many issues that we need to talk about in this movement, if you will. So that's something that I promise you we'll spend as much time as necessary as an organization listening to each other, understanding each other, and then we'll make a decision together. But I hesitate to say, Jake, because I want to make sure that I'm sitting with our guys on things as like that.
All right, Tony Zarella, you're up.
Hey, Kevin, how are you? I hope you and the family are well. I hope I'm not repeating a question, but when you talked about what could happen down the road, I know you can't predict the future. One of the things JB said yesterday was we all react and we're up in arms when this happens because it's in the media cycle. Then it kind of goes away. Do you almost feel like this conversation has to continue into the fall when you actually do take the field?
Yeah, I think, my message to our players right away, and we've spent every meeting addressing this. I got a team meeting here at 1:00. We're going to continue to talk about it. We've brought in some guest speakers to talk about it. So it's not one Zoom meeting's not going to solve this in any way, shape, or form. But I think unified action over the course of time can make a positive impact. So JB, myself, this organization, we are trying so hard to give our players resources to I mentioned get in the arena and act, because dialogue is great. Listening is outstanding. That's part of the healing process. But now is the time to make sure that we're making positive change in our communities.
All right, Scott Petrick, you're up. If you could unmute on your side. Thank you.
Hey, Coach, has there been one, maybe not just one, but something that stuck out from the speakers that you've had, or even some of the guys on your own team when you've had these discussions? And then you talk about resources and putting stuff into action. Do you have some examples of how you plan to use your platform going forward?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things like I don't want to get into specifics necessarily of what guys have shared, but it's exactly what you would anticipate. There's been some frustration among all of our guys, and I think, but I promise you, there's been a very unified message from all of our guys that they want to be part of this change. And then, simple things like donating. A lot of us are in position to donate, so we gave them some resources, some places to go educate themselves on which charities maybe they should donate to. Gave them some reading material, some listening material, podcast-wise, in terms of educating, because we talk so much about listening. We gave them some things that they can listen to. I encourage them to attend a peaceful protest, attend a rally. I went with PJB. I brought my 2 young boys. My mom, who's in town, came with me. My wife stayed back with my daughter, who's too young, but we went to a peaceful protest this past weekend. And that was the first time I've ever been to one. But it was empowering. You saw the passion, you saw the frustration, you saw the love. I think it was just a really enlightening moment for me, and I was able to share that with my boys, at a young age. I think that's part of this is making sure that we are doing everything in our power to educate each other, and especially the next generation.
Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. We'll go back to Mary Kay. Mary Kay, if you could unmute.
Yes, Coach. First of all, can you share with us a couple things really quickly? Can you share with us where you attended the peaceful protest and what was the nature of that? And then that's my first question. And then the second question is, can you share with us maybe some of the guest speakers that you will bring in to talk to the team?
Yeah, and I'm so sensitive. I want to promote the message. I don't want to promote myself. But this is so important. And I go back to Anquan Bolden, attach your name. So that was out in Avon, that the protest that I was at this past weekend. And then today we have Alvin Bragg speaking to the team. He's someone that went to Harvard with Paul DePodesta. He's the, I believe, deputy, I have it written down. He's running for district attorney in Manhattan currently. He's in the arena, in the social justice arena from a legal standpoint. So he's going to share some things with the players today. But again, I say all that to say we're trying like crazy to educate our players, educate ourselves, and do everything that we can remotely for now to give our guys some tools to make a positive change.
Thank you.
PJ Ziegler, you have our next question. If you could unmute.
Hey, Coach, appreciate the time. 2 quick questions here. One, I know it's been just a couple of days that you've been back in the building. What's that been like, during all this, getting your temperature checked and all that? And then also you came on as a first-time head coach obviously, you were dealing with the COVID-19 situation, and now you're dealing with the social injustice. What's it been like for you as a first-time head coach, having to balance both that COVID-19, the social injustice, and kind of football has been kind of on the back burner? Thank you.
Yeah, PJ, the building, I would say it's interesting. You know, there's some street signs and one-way hallways, and you wear your mask everywhere, and you maintain social distance. But these are the protocols, and this is to stay safe, and this is to make sure that we have a safe environment for our staff, for our entire building, for our players. This is what's required, and we're going to adhere to the protocols to the T. It is different, though, as you can imagine. So when you're walking around the building and you're wearing those masks, you kind of have to stare real closely to see who that person is. But it's been interesting. And then as it relates to the second part of the question, I'm lucky I got some really good people around me. So I'm fortunate that I can lean on people on staff, people in our front office, our players, as we navigate some unique times.
Thank you, PJ. We have 4 hands up. We'll take these last 4 people: Jason, Tony, Tom, and Mary Kay. Jason Lloyd, your line's open. If you can unmute on your side, please.
Sorry, hang on. Hey, Kevin. The Players Coalition released the list today of the 1,100 names of players and coaches. Your name is on that list along with a number of your players. Just wondering your thought process behind that on the Ending Qualifying Immunity Act, and just how that came to be. How so many different Browns players got to be on that list?
Yeah, you know, credit to the Players Coalition, which is doing some amazing work in terms of educating our players and giving them resources. And that was something that they brought to our attention, I guess, last week. And, you know, I did my homework. I did my research. And, again, I go back to attach your name. And that's part of this is knowing that we have to do better, knowing that there are, you know, I would say most of us realize that there have to be reforms of some sort. And I just felt like this was something that was important support moving forward.
All right, Tony Grossi, you're up. If you could unmute. Thank you.
Kevin, usually at this time of year, rosters are 99.5% complete going into training camp. Can you say whether yours is 100% complete? And I know that answer, it's not. But if it's not, does this weird off season where you really haven't even physically met your team yet, does that encourage or discourage the possibility of bringing in total newcomers to this team at this late stage?
Yeah, I don't know, Tony. I would tell you, Andrew and his staff every day, I'm sure, are thinking about ways to improve the roster. And like you said, though, on June 10th, you know, in a typical year, your team is mostly set. So I think that's probably a better question for Andrew and his crew, but I don't think it's news to say that they're always looking for ways to improve our roster. I really like the guys we got. I'm excited to work. I've really enjoyed working with our guys virtually. I'm excited to see them and to get on the practice field and do all those things. But it's an NFL roster week to week, year to year, month to month, as we know, is constantly evolving.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony. Back to Mary Kay. Mary Kay, if you could unmute, please.
Coach, how did you sort of decide upon your player leadership council that you have? Is this something that, you know, you chose people or they chose themselves, and kind of how many guys are on it? What can you tell us?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mary Kay. I should say that's something I want to do. We're not there yet. I think when we get back in the building together, at least that's how we've done it in the past, we'll make sure that we have a leadership committee. And the good news is we got some guys that are leaders already right now. So guys that I can pick up the phone and I have and can call, and I can get some feedback and I can ask them questions. They can ask me questions. I'm comfortable from that standpoint, but it is something when we get back together that we will certainly have committees that the rest of the team, should they need something, can go to those type of guys.
And have you been sort of, I would say, proud of guys like Jarvis and Odell and JC Treader and Miles that have already spoken out, have taken action, and have already gotten into the arena?
No doubt. And we've pointed those guys out on our meetings throughout this time. And that's the Browns are an important part of this community. I've seen it firsthand, the impact that our guys can have in the Cleveland community and really around the country is something that I know they're taking very seriously, and I commend them for their efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Tom Withers, you're up.
Hey, Kevin, I know you're big on camaraderie, chemistry. Coach Van Pelt told us last week about the dunk contest, the movie poster contest.
I wasn't supposed to tell you guys about that.
Ways of getting these guys to bond. In a strange way, Kevin, has the circumstances allowed you maybe to get, even though you haven't been with them, allowed you to get to know your players maybe more intimately than you would under normal circumstances?
It has, and I'm just kidding. AVP was fine to share that. Yeah, I'm just so sensitive to not just worrying about the X's and the O's right now. It's important. We're installing and teaching a new offensive system, a new defensive system. So we have a curriculum to achieve that. Starting next week, we'll be in review mode. So we're out of the install phase, but it's still a matter of, with teaching, you can't just hit it once and it's done. We got to go back and review and build upon the foundation that we've started to lay. All the while, we got to come together as a team. And the challenge has been to come together while many miles apart. And it's a challenge, but not something that we can't do. So we've tried a few different things. We got some unique people on this team, I'll tell you. And again, anything to kind of get a laugh, keep this thing as loose as we can, and start to come together. And that's going to be a challenge when we do physically come together as well. So it's something that I'm thinking very seriously about. As important as the X's and O's are, we're working really hard on the team building aspect as well.
And our final question is from Jake Trotter. Jake, if you can unmute, you can close us out.
Yeah, Kevin, Andrew Berry's in a unique position. I know he's really been taking the lead on what's happening in the country, within the organization regarding social justice. Your reaction to the leadership he's been showing, what tone that is set for you guys, the rest of the team and the franchise regarding, in your words, getting in the arena.
Yeah, Andrew's been outstanding. He's my neighbor right now, my temporary neighbor. And I think the world of the guy. He's not afraid to lead from out in front. He's not afraid to put others in the spotlight and get behind others. So he has my full support. I know he's been supporting me. And in moments like this, you get to see guys like Andrew step up, and he certainly has stepped up in this regard. And I'm really proud of him, and I think he's doing a great job. And I think there's more to be done, and I think you'll continue to hear from Andrew on this topic.
All right. Thanks, Coach, for the time today. Thanks, everybody else, for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.